Hey everybody, we are just back from running the budget YJ on the Rubicon, and one of the things that became very apparent to me as we kind of tiptoed our way through there was the factory cage is literally a glorified swing set. So we're going to take this out. This thick padding is very misleading. Underneath here is a very thin cage that really you would not even want to dump it over on its side. These things typically land on the windshield. It'll just smash everything. And we're going to put in a real GenRight cage. And that will be a 6-point full 1.75" DOM tubing cage that's totally reinforced and really ties into the tub, even with options to tie it into the frame. All right, we're ready to rip the stock cage out and get started on installing the GenRight cage. All right, so these are all the parts for the full cage, and you can see it involves a lot of tubes. Find this cage tube layout map, if you will, in the instructions, and then start to lay the tubes out on the floor. The next step is you've got to take the C pillar and the B pillar and find this sleeve, and we're going to put these together and weld this together while it's on the floor, then stand it up inside here. Okay, when you're putting the base plates in, it's really important to make sure the undersurface is clean. If there's any rust, you need to get that cleaned up. The plates need to get wiped, and then you're going to loosely bolt these down so that they can slide around, so that while you're placing the cage, there's a little key notch on here. You need everything to be able to move without fighting it. And then once the tubes are in place, you can finger tighten these as you go, and that'll let it get set. And we're gonna mount the new A-pillar stanchion, and it's a 2-piece unit. You need to drill these 2 holes in the plate. I'm gonna show you a trick on how to mark the holes you need to drill. What you're gonna do is cut off the head on the factory bolt or one of the bolts we gave you. You're going to then sharpen the head, and you're going to stick it back in here just enough to where it sticks out. Then you're gonna line up and bolt these top bolts on and tap it with a hammer, and that'll mark the backside for exactly where you need to drill it. And then we're gonna check the fitment, and look at that, perfect. We are at the next stage of putting one of our roll cages in our budget YJ. We've put the plates in and tacked up the first side. Now we're sorting the rest of the tubes and gonna go ahead and start working on the second side. Then we'll pull the 2 sides together with some straps after we put the tubes in the middle, and the whole thing will square up, and then we can tack it all in place. Okay, after we place the 2 sides and tacked the bases into place, then we pushed this dash bar into place. Then we took the strap and put the B pillar bar in and pulled it tight. Now, this is not squeezing this super tight, it's just enough to keep it all there so we can fit all the tubes. Because as we're fitting the tubes, you've got to do it in a certain order or you won't be able to get it put together. So now we have this A-pillar crossbar, and we're gonna fit in these spreader bars right now. All right, we've used 4 ratchet straps. The 4th one we've actually used to pull the cage until we got it perfectly level and square. So now he's gonna go ahead and tack it up and make sure that it stays right where it's at. Now what we're gonna do is go around and tack the rest of the tubes together so we can release the ratchet straps. So we've gone around and welded half the tubes all over the outside. Now it's time to go ahead and weld the inside on all the tubes, and then that'll allow us to add the handles and some of the other gussets that we need to to finish up this portion. When you get our harness bar kit, it comes with these cool GenRight aluminum side plates. These little guys go on here flush, but to do that, you've got to grind part of the weld right where it meets this aluminum plate. They also come with these tabs that have little clip nuts on them. And to fit everything down flush, sometimes you just have to grind the edge of the tabs to make sure that they fit the tubes properly. Then what you're gonna do is place it on here, tack it from the back side, then you pull the plate off and finish weld those tabs. Okay, once the welds cool down, then you'll just grind the top of those flat so that plate sits back down on here very clean, and then you go ahead and put it on. All right, while Devin's doing the other side plate on the harness bar, what we're gonna do is talk about what the options are. So this middle bar with the two side hoops and the aluminum plates is called the harness bar kit. That's an option. Then the X bar is an additional option on top of that. Then this C-pillar bar is an option in addition to that. So otherwise, it's the basic cage with these options filled in, okay? Now, we still have the handles to put in up front. There's two side handles that are small and one larger center handle. Then we're gonna go ahead and finish this, which gets cut, and we make it removable with tube couplers. The Dash V-bar is also an option that I highly recommend because all of the weight is in the front, and when the Jeep does roll over, it typically lands on the A-pillar, so you want as much support there as you can get. So there you go, there's all the options. Having all the tubes definitely gives the cage a lot more strength and something you're gonna seriously want to consider. One more great option to consider when you're building your cage is our aluminum roof. It adds additional protection and only requires welding on some tabs. This top bolts on or off so you can install your soft or hard top. All right, now that we've pulled the cage out and did the final welding, all those spots that we couldn't get to while it was in the Jeep, then we took an opportunity to go over the whole cage, and I usually just run my hand over everything to make sure that there was no weld boogers or weld splatter that got on there that's gonna leave a mark and get even through the paint or powder coat. I also popped all the clip nuts off the side plates and the roof. Then I went over all the gussets, made sure there was no sharp edges on there. You really need to deburr all of those laser cut flat metal pieces to make sure that the powder coat or paint will stick to it. It doesn't like to stick to the sharp edges. So we just went over everything, and then both Devin and I double checked each other, pulled all the bolts out, everything out. We'll go back over this whole thing when it comes back and chase the threads with a tap, make sure everything's perfect, pop all the clip nuts back in, and then put it in the Jeep for final assembly. We got the cage back from powder coating. We're gonna go ahead and unwrap this thing and get it stuck back in here and start putting the interior back in. All right, you just watched us drop the cage back into the tub, and we had strapped it right here. The reason we did that is there's about a 1-inch lip right here that goes underneath the dash on this upper part of the stanchion. So you have to pull this together in order to slip it in. Then I'm gonna go ahead and put on this lower stanchion or this lower leg, and it attaches through 2 bolts that tie it into this. And then there's several points along here that also tie this in to the side of the tub. So this thing is really strong as it bolts in here. Then there's 4 bolts that go down through the floor with a backing plate on the bottom. The nice part about this is there's no interruption of your foot room, and I'll show you that in a little while after we get the seats in. All right, so now that the stanchion's in place, I want to get in and show you guys how much leg room you have. This is all what's really nice. So door closes nice, you can still use the emergency brake, everything is there, and you get plenty of foot room. All right, the last step of putting in your cage is to personalize it. Some people, you know, rather than welding on the handle, they'd rather have a bolt-on handle that could go in either spot. There's also Scotch phone mounts that go on and then hold your phone magnetically. Lastly, a nice fire extinguisher mount that you can put in a couple different places depending on where you'd like to have it. Quick release. These are all really nice options for you to dress up and finish out your cage.